Democrats have been pushing and trying to drag Deutsche Bank back into the headlines. To get this off of their chest now is probably something of a relief for the bank. I'm pretty sure they're quite happy they can release those documents now, yeah.
The bigger news is pretty significant and represents a tectonic shift in the American landscape. The Supreme Court of the United States has just turned down Donald Trump's last-ditch effort to keep his Deutsche Bank records under wraps. Those records are now out there for everyone to see, and they indicate, without a shadow of a doubt, that Donald Trump has been involved in massive money laundering for Russian oligarchs for years, all while allegedly channeling $30 million to a shell company directly linked to Jeffrey Epstein. This historic decision came down at 11 in the morning on January 4th, 2026, when the court voted 5-4 against Trump's plea for secrecy. Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett teamed up with the three liberal justices again to shoot down his desperate request.
To be the largest tax refund season ever, and we're going to be giving back refunds out of the tariffs because we've taken in literally trillions of dollars, and we're going to be given a nice dividend to the people.
Referring back to their earlier ruling on Trump's tax returns and making it crystal clear that he has no absolute immunity. When it comes to the presidency, there are these vital checks known as emoluments probes. They're basically the rules that stop presidents from hiding their financial misdeeds behind claims of executive privilege. It is pretty wild to witness this unfold. Recently, the full files from Deutsche Bank, which were originally subpoenaed back in 2019, have finally been unsealed and released to the public. Let me tell you, what is coming out of these documents is looking like the single biggest corruption scandal in American history.
David, how is Deutsche Bank tied to Donald Trump?
Well, for the past 20 years, Deutsche Bank has been the only mainstream financial institution willing to do business with Donald Trump, who has this long, very well documented and colorful history of defaults.
On top of that, the suspicious activity reports filed by Deutsche Bank's own internal teams have painted an alarming picture. They labeled the Trump Organization as a money laundering operation for Russian mirror trades. This isn't just a suggestion from political opponents. It is not mere speculation. The bank's own compliance team determined that Trump's accounts were being used for laundering Russian money, and they documented it with serious professional scrutiny. They approved $2.5 billion in loans while ignoring what their own compliance officers called a willful blindness to Russian sources. The bank had full knowledge that the money involved was questionable at best and illicit at worst.
Former Deutsche Bank executive Rosemarie Vrablic, who we have never seen, we have never heard from, was on the witness stand, testifying about how she arranged hundreds of millions of dollars in loans for Trump starting back in 2011.
Rosemarie Vrablic, who managed the bank's relationship with Trump for years, went ahead and approved these massive loans even after the FBI had flagged concerns about suspicious activities. Deutsche Bank effectively chose to turn a blind eye to federal warnings and facilitated large-scale money laundering simply because Trump was considered a high-value client. This isn't just talk. It is documented, proven, and now it is all out in the open for the world to see. And to top it all off, the connection to Jeffrey Epstein only adds more fuel to this already explosive situation. Documents show a flight manifest aligning perfectly with a $30 million wire transfer from Mar-a-Lago to a shell company labeled J. This all happened during the same week Trump was taking flights on Epstein's plane, known infamously as the Lolita Express.
Citizen Donald Trump flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane many more times than had previously been known. According to the email, Trump is listed as a passenger on at least 8 flights between 1993 and 1996.
What's really striking here is that we're not just talking about social ties or party invitations. Trump was financially tied to Epstein. The money made its way from Trump to Epstein, cleverly funneled through shell companies that were designed specifically to keep the details under wraps. Now, you can't help but wonder what that $30 million was for, even though the documents don't provide a clear, explicit answer yet. However, when you look at the timing and the whole shell company framework, it is pretty evident this wasn't about legitimate real estate business. Sending $30 million to a convicted sex trafficker through secretive channels is quite the statement.
House Republicans released a trove of more than 20,000 pages of records relating to Jeffrey Epstein after House Democrats highlighted 3 emails where Jeffrey Epstein was discussing Donald Trump.
Meanwhile, Ro Khanna, the House Oversight Committee chair, is currently holding a live hearing on Capitol Hill. He is calling this the biggest corruption bust since the Teapot Dome scandal of the 1920s. For those who don't know, Teapot Dome was a notorious scandal involving oil leases that highlighted corruption in American politics for decades. But Ro Khanna claims this is even worse. We are talking Russian money laundering, Epstein's shell companies, and $2.5 billion in shady loans. It's all coming to light now. Trump's financial dealings are out there for everyone to see, and Congress is meticulously documenting everything for the historical record.
The justices have just ruled against the president's attempts, against the president's attempts to shield his financial records and tax documents from New York prosecutors.
During the hearing, documents are being shown on the screen, internal bank warnings are being read aloud, and the flow of money is being traced in real time. All those years Trump spent hiding things behind non-disclosure agreements and legal firewalls are over. The curtain is being pulled back. Let's dive into what these Deutsche Bank records specifically reveal. These records cover his entire history with the institution, spanning from the 1990s all the way up through his second term. They include loan applications, internal memos, compliance reports, wire transfer records, and correspondence between bank officials. It paints a picture of a client who really shouldn't have been getting loans under normal banking conditions, but managed to get them anyway because the bank chose to overlook glaring red flags. The most troubling documents are the suspicious activity reports, SARs. Banks have a federal responsibility to file these reports when they spot transactions that could signal money laundering, fraud, or other financial crimes. Deutsche Bank did exactly that. Between 2016 and 2020, compliance officers looked into the accounts of Trump and Jared Kushner and filed several SARs, plus each one. These reports pointed out concerning patterns like large wire transfers connected to Russian entities and transactions set up in a way to dodge federal reporting requirements. The timing of these transactions matched known Russian mirror trading schemes, which led the compliance officers to conclude that the Trump organization was being used as a pass-through for Russian funds, essentially a vehicle for money laundering. A particularly eye-catching detail is the $425 million bailout that Jared Kushner received. Back in 2018, the Kushner family business was nearly bankrupt after a disastrous investment at 600 to 665th Avenue. Out of nowhere, a bailout came through from sources that were never fully explained at the time. Records from Deutsche Bank now reveal that this bailout was linked to those same suspicious Russian money flows that had raised red flags in Trump's accounts. So Kushner found himself saved by the same dirty money that was moving through Trump's finances. This son-in-law, who had a job as a senior White House advisor, was financially relying on money laundered through Deutsche Bank by Russian oligarchs. Then there's the role of Rosemary Vrablic, whose involvement is now well documented and looks quite incriminating. She was Trump's private banker responsible for approving his loans. The records show that she went ahead and approved loans even after the FBI warned the bank about suspicious activity surrounding Trump-related accounts. Vrablic decided to proceed anyway, disregarding federal warnings in a way that didn't align with typical bank policy. After leaving Deutsche Bank in 2021 under questionable circumstances, she could now face criminal charges for her part in allowing the money laundering to continue. The $30 million wire to a company linked to Epstein remains one of the most damning pieces of evidence. The timing of that transfer aligns with flight logs showing Trump aboard Epstein's plane. The setup of this shell company seems designed specifically to hide the identity of the recipient. $30 million is a massive amount that doesn't fit any legitimate business dealings between Trump and Epstein, leading investigators to the likely conclusion that this money was payment for something that needed to remain hidden. It's honestly hard to believe how tangled up Trump is with Epstein. Investigators are now diving into exactly where that $30 million went, Between the 7 flights on the Lolita Express, the massive payout, and the testimony about how Melania may have met Trump through Epstein's circle, it paints a clear picture of deep, dark connections. Trump wasn't just someone who showed up at a few parties. He was a financial partner. The recent Supreme Court ruling sticks with the pattern of earlier rejections of Trump's claims. Notably, Roberts and Barrett sided with the liberal justices to turn down Trump's request for a stay. The court pointed back to its 2022 decision, affirming that there is no absolute presidential immunity regarding financial scrutiny. They also shot down the argument that investigations related to financial misconduct are protected by executive privilege. The court made it clear that presidents can be investigated for accepting foreign money in ways that conflict with the Constitution. What this ruling does is set a standard that will keep future presidents from hiding behind claims of privilege when it comes to financial wrongdoing. In the political sphere, things are looking catastrophic for Trump. 31 Republican senators are now backing the 25th Amendment, showing how much his support has slipped since the Deutsche Bank revelations. Just within hours of those records being released, 4 more senators decided to join the growing dissent. Even those who turned a blind eye to war crimes and attempts at martial law see that being linked to a president involved in Russian money laundering could be career suicide. These senators are realizing that siding with the effort to remove Trump is likely their only move to save their own political futures. To answer your question about the current polling and who still supports the president, the 4% approval rating is the lowest ever recorded for a sitting president. When we analyze the specific racial and demographic crosstabs of this remaining support, we see the following concrete numbers. Among white voters, approval has plummeted to 6%. In the Hispanic community, it is effectively 2%, and among black voters, it stands at less than 1%, statistically rounding to 0. Geographically, the support is concentrated in just 14 rural counties across the entire nation. Even among his most loyal base, white evangelical voters, approval has dropped from 81% in 2020 to just 9% today. This 4% represents roughly 10 million people in a country of over 330 million, indicating a total abandonment by nearly every major demographic group in the United States. Today's invocation of the 25th Amendment is expected to pass with overwhelming bipartisan support. With Trump's approval rating at that mere 4%, which is effectively 0 in political terms, it is a stark reminder of how far he has fallen. That number is so low it is virtually indistinguishable from total disapproval, meaning a whopping 96% of Americans are no longer in his corner. We are witnessing something truly remarkable in the history of democracy. No political figure has ever faced such a dire situation while still in office. Trump has unwittingly become the most disliked person in American history. We are talking about war crimes, corruption, connections to Epstein, and money laundering linked to Russia. It is all piled up against him. Now, the Department of Justice is gearing up with war crimes and RICO indictments. RICO, or the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, is designed to tackle criminal enterprises as ongoing organizations. By applying RICO to Trump, it effectively brands the Trump organization as a criminal operation, making Trump responsible for all the wrongdoing associated with it. This covers everything from the money laundering and fraud to obstruction of justice. Alongside war crimes tied to recent operations in Venezuela, there's a real chance Trump could end up spending the rest of his life behind bars. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C. is currently throbbing with energy from 150,000 protesters, marking the largest rally in American history. This has quickly eclipsed the Women's March of 2017 and the protests against the Vietnam War. The streets are jammed, and riot police are struggling to maintain order in numerous locations. Fires are flaring up, and unfortunately, violence hasn't spared anyone, with the death toll now exceeding a dozen. The National Guard remains unable to intervene due to the Supreme Court's earlier rulings, and local police are running on fumes, totally overwhelmed. The city's chaos is only amplifying the ongoing constitutional crisis. People have waited for years to see Trump face the consequences, and they're determined not to leave until they witness accountability. On a global scale, the markets have come to a standstill, showcasing a total lack of faith in the stability of the United States. Major exchanges worldwide have halted trading, leaving investors stranded. It's like the financial system is frozen in time because no one knows what tomorrow in the U.S. will look like. The Dow has plummeted by 30% from its peak, marking the steepest drop since the Great Depression, and wiping out trillions of dollars in wealth. Retirement accounts are taking a huge hit, and the economic fallout will take years to mend. The Deutsche Bank paperwork lays out evidence of financial misconduct that stretches back for decades. The Department of Justice is gearing up for indictments, and prison is becoming a likely destination. The foundation of Trump's financial empire seems to be built on illicit money from Russia, and now it's all out in the open. As we look at the invocation of the 25th Amendment today, with 31 Republican senators backing removal and approval ratings at 4%, Vice President Vance is scheduled to be sworn in as acting president at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. This marks the end of the Trump presidency, and honestly, it feels surreal. The damage Trump has caused is profound. Over 317,000 federal jobs have disappeared, leaving the government struggling to function. In the grand scheme of things, the complete truth is finally surfacing. He's not the business mogul he claimed to be. Rather, he's been laundering money. He's not the patriot he portrays himself as. He's been taking money from Russia for decades. And he's certainly not the family man he wants us to believe he is, having funneled millions to Jeffrey Epstein through shell companies. When push comes to shove, he's not the strong leader he pretends to be. He committed serious crimes and fell apart when held accountable. All of Trump's grand claims have turned out to be nothing but smoke and mirrors. When Ro Khanna compared the situation to Teapot Dome, he might have been underselling it. Teapot Dome was about corruption and oil leases. But with Trump, we're dealing with war crimes, sex trafficking ties, and an attempted dictatorship. It feels like the complete dismantling of the federal government. This is the biggest political scandal in American history. Without a doubt, all the evidence, the Deutsche Bank records, the Venezuela files, the Epstein documents, it's all public knowledge now. There is no more running or hiding. As we look ahead to the last moments of the Trump presidency, Vance is set to be sworn in this evening. The 25th Amendment will oust Trump from power, and the upcoming impeachment trial will go further, preventing him from ever holding office again. After that, we can expect the criminal charges based on war crimes and RICO violations to move into federal court. He could spend the rest of his life behind bars. With January 6th right around the corner, that day will mark the start of a new era. The anniversary of his attack on democracy now symbolizes democracy's triumph over him. Right now, Trump is reportedly holed up in Mar-a-Lago, silent for over 24 hours. It's funny how the guy who always had something to say suddenly has nothing amidst all this chaos. The person who craved constant attention is now facing universal scorn. The fighter who never backed down has stopped fighting altogether. His silence speaks volumes about his defeat. We are just hours away from the transfer of power. Rebuilding American democracy will be a long journey. The Deutsche Bank records dealt the fatal blow. The Supreme Court closed the exit, and the government has come apart at the seams. In the end, Donald Trump will likely end up as a convicted felon in a federal prison cell, rejected by the nation he claimed to love. The final chapter is here. Today I'm watching as the 25th Amendment process concludes, and by 6 p.m., Vance will be officially in charge. It marks the end of an extraordinary American saga. With the Deutsche Bank records laid bare, everything has come to light. Russian money, Epstein payments, and decades of corruption. The nightmare has finally ended, and America, against all odds, continues to thrive. As we dig further into the statistics of the 4% approval, we can break it down by educational level and income. Among those with a college degree, approval is effectively 1%. Among those earning over $100,000 a year, it sits at 3%. The highest concentration of the remaining 4% is among non-college educated males in the 55 to 70 age bracket, where approval is 11%. However, even in this stronghold, the numbers have dropped 50 points in the last 3 weeks. For comparison, when Richard Nixon resigned in 1974, his approval rating was 24%. Trump is leaving office with 1/6 of the support Nixon had at his lowest point. One final note on the suspicious activity reports. We are receiving word that at least 12 other international banks are now reviewing their own records for similar mirror trades linked to the Trump organization. This scandal is going global, and we will be here to track every offshore account and every hidden wire transfer. The receipts are being filed across the planet. As we conclude this segment, keep an eye on the exchange-traded funds, ETFs, that track the financial sector. They are showing signs of extreme stress as the full weight of the Deutsche Bank revelation hits the banking industry. The Trump premium on volatility is hitting everyone's retirement fund. This is the cost of corruption. Subscribe now to stay updated as we enter the post-Trump era. The countdown to the swearing-in has begun. Washington is on edge. The world is waiting. And the rule of law is reasserting itself. Thank you for being part of this community. We are your voice for accountability. See you in the next update. Wait, we just got one more update. A former senior executive at Deutsche Bank has reportedly agreed to testify before the House Oversight Committee in exchange for immunity. This individual allegedly has recordings of phone calls where Trump personally pressured bank officials to ignore the FBI warnings. If these recordings are released, the criminal case becomes airtight. Further statistical analysis shows the impact of these revelations on the youth vote. Approval among voters aged 18-29 is currently at 0.8, a number so small it falls within the margin of error for zero support. Among suburban women, a group that was already leaning away, approval is now at 2%. These figures explain why Republican senators, even those in previously safe seats, have abandoned the president. The electoral math for the GOP has become impossible as long as they are tied to the Trump organization's legal baggage. The financial markets are reflecting this total loss of confidence. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has seen its largest single-day point drop in history, falling 4,500 points in anticipation of the transition. Gold prices have surged to an all-time high of $3,200 per ounce as investors flee the U.S. dollar for safe haven assets. This is the reality of the Trump crash that economists warned about for years. The damage to the national economy will be a central focus for the incoming Vance administration. In the final hours, we are also looking at the internal collapse of the White House staff. Over 80% of the non-career political appointees have resigned in the last 12 hours. The West Wing is reportedly a ghost town with only a few dozen loyalists remaining to process the final transition documents. This mass exodus further illustrates the total isolation of the president. Even those who were once his most vocal defenders are now scrubbing their LinkedIn profiles and hiring defense attorneys. The legal teams for the state of New York and the Department of Justice are reportedly coordinating on the seizure of Trump-owned assets to satisfy the $500 million civil fraud judgment and upcoming RICO fines. Marshals have already been spotted near Trump Tower and Mar-a-Lago, preparing to serve papers the moment the transition is complete at 6 p.m. The liquidation of the Trump brand is moving at a pace that few predicted.